Thank you, Staley family, and we do respect and honor Charlene and her husband Stan and their wonderful family. Feel it an honor and a privilege to be able to call them friends and neighbors here at Enterprise. The daughters of the Utah Pioneer Queen, Charlene Staley, we thank you. Today, we honor the early settlers of Enterprise, and we have asked their descendants, direct descendants, to participate in our program today. To the extreme southern end of the vast Escalante Desert, which stretches from the Great Salt Lake on the north to the long black volcanic mountain called Old Flat Top on the southwest, lies the little town of Enterprise. It is situated in a cove surrounded on three sides by mountains with an altitude of approximately 1 mile. You know, Denver refers to itself as the Mile High City. Enterprise is also the Mile High City. Today, with its streets lined with lovely modern homes and green fertile fields lying for miles in all directions, it's quite a different picture to the one witnessed by Orson Huntsman over 100 years ago, when he stood in his covered wagon looking out over the valley, and he saw in his mind's eye what could be accomplished. We have asked Orson Huntsman's grandson, Bishop Leland Huntsman, to share with us a couple of thoughts about Orson Huntsman when Enterprise was first settled. Bishop Huntsman, of course, is one of the great pioneers himself of Enterprise. In a couple of months, Bishop Huntsman will be 103 years old. Bishop Huntsman is going to give us a couple of direct quotes spoken by his grandfather, Orson Huntsman, when he first came into this valley and thought about what could be accomplished here.
Grandpa wrote in his diary, I have thought for some time that if I had some way of getting water to the mouth of Shoal Creek, we should be all satisfied to settle there. Now that would bring the water down to the mouth of Shoal Creek about 6-7 miles from Hebron. He said, I saw that how it could be done, but I had no means and no influence, so that looked impossible for me to do anything in that direction. But I could not keep the thought from my mind. My thought was to build a dam at the narrows of Little Pine Valley to store water and then to move the Hebron to the mouth of the canyon and farm that good land where sage grows like trees. They grew to be about between 8, 9, 10 feet high.
Years later, in June of 1891, Orson Huntsman hired Isaac C. McFarland, the county surveyor, and with the help of C.S. Fackrell, they laid out a town site here of about 120 lots. Orson had first choice of the lots, then the rest were numbered, and each man drew a number out of a hat to see which lot he would be able to settle on, and that would be their lot. Each lot sold for $9.
Orson Huntsman called this little town site enterprise because of the daring greatness of the enterprise to be undertaken by a handful of people in building the reservoir without money and influence if the dream was to become a reality.
Thank you, Bishop Huntsman, for sharing those thoughts from the diary of your grandfather, Orson Huntsman, with us about the settling of Enterprise. Thank you very much. We hope you're still with us on the next Pioneer Day celebration a year from now, when you'll be 103. Orson Huntsman's daughter, Mary Edith Huntsman, married a man by the name of Robert Francis Tate, who had been living in Hebron. A granddaughter of Robert Francis Tate, Sister Joan Tate, will now give us a history of her great-great-grandmother, I believe it is, which will remind us of the sacrifices made by our early pioneer ancestors. Sister Joan Tate.
My story begins on December the 23rd, 1832, in Bombay, India, when a little princess was born, who later became my great-grandmother. And because Elizabeth was born into high rank and the nobility of the land, she was given a good education, very special education, graduating from an academy when only 14. Her parents, James Xavier and Juliana Bell, were truly proud of their daughter. And when she was 17, she was married to William Tate, a handsome young man from Downpatrick, Ireland, who, having spent some time in Scotland, was baptized a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and also became a regimental drillmaster in the service of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, Queen Victoria. And 18, and he baptized there, and in 1852, Elizabeth was also baptized into the church. And together with the young couple, entertained missionaries in their home, and there they were blessed with 3 children. Little James died suddenly of cholera one afternoon, even though the morning before he had seemed perfectly well and happy. And in 1855, it was decided that the saints should leave India, and William immediately complied, setting sail to go first San Francisco and then to Utah. Elizabeth stayed behind until the next year, as she was expecting their 3rd child. Now, little Johnny was determined to get on that ship with his daddy. So he got on, and he stayed on until this boat started up. So poor mother had to wave goodbye to him also, without even so much as a change of clothing. And later, her little baby daughter, Mary Ann, came to comfort her, and in 1856, she too started making plans to leave, even though her family had promised that if she would only stay there, they would take good care of her and her little baby. They would want for nothing, but if she left, they could do nothing for her. Well, Elizabeth loved her husband and her newly found religion. So she started gathering up everything she could gather and made arrangements to get on the boat, saying goodbye to family, friends, and the luxury she had known. She booked passage, having no money, as a servant to the captain's wife. But even there, tragedy struck again. Her precious little Mary Ann suddenly took sick and died. And to avoid burying her in the ocean, arrangements were made to wait until arrival at Liverpool. By this time, Elizabeth just felt as though she could hardly go on, but because of the kindness of the mission president there in Liverpool, she was encouraged and continued landing with other saints there in Boston on the 1st of May. And then they took a train to Iowa, where they were able to join up with the Willingham Coal Company on July 15, 1856. And one day, while the company was camped at midday, Elizabeth and her lady friend that she was traveling with felt so weary and footsore that they just couldn't go on another step. And so they decided that they would just move up just a little way from the rest of the camp and lie down for a little short nap. Much to their horror, upon awakening, they discovered that they were all alone in that vast wilderness. Struck with terror, they decided to pray for God and to follow the tracks made by the other handcarts. They just kept walking along with night coming on and hearing the howls of wolves and coyotes until they came to a little stream of water, which they decided the others must have crossed. And so they stood on the bank and shouted as loud as they could. And much to their relief, 2 men on the other side heard their cries and came to assist them across the stream to safety. And she said that the trip might have gone along very smoothly after that, had it not been for the early arrival of that little winter. Now, Elizabeth wasn't really at all accustomed to such cold, and so you can just imagine how frozen and warm and hungry she must have felt when that rescue party finally arrived in camp sent by Brigham Young, and how especially happy she was upon seeing her beloved husband with the party. Together now they could move on to Salt Lake and arrive there in November about the 9th, and then William took her on to her new home he had built for her in Cedar City. There she taught school with him for a couple of years, and then decided that she needed to devote her time more to her family and household duties. She had 10 children, by the way, and housekeeping wasn't at all easy for Elizabeth, because over in India she had had servants to do most of that work. And she had to learn to do little things like baking bread. But she learned them all and did them well, and was a very excellent seamstress, beautifully and done work. And so she was much in demand for making men's white shirts, and she sang alto in the choir and went with her husband to St. George on several occasions to do temple work for their ancestors. And finally, after a long, faithful life, Elizabeth Xavier Tate passed away on September 7th at the home of a daughter here in Enterprise. And now I'm looking forward to the time when I can personally hear her stories from her and express my gratitude for the sacrifices she made so that I could be here as a member of God's true church.